How's everybody doing on this miserable, I don't even want to use all the profanity I want to attach to it. It's a terrible day outside. So hopefully wherever you are safe and warm and happy and planning on taking a nap. I'm good, Enzo. Thanks for asking. Hanging out here with my dog Hank, who's on the couch with me. I'm coming at you live from my living room. Again, if you're watching this later on YouTube, you're not going to see my face today. That's all right. As you know, you're not missing much, but that's just how it goes. So today, what do we got? Hang on a second. There we go. So today we've got a shorter agenda, and especially as we get deeper into April, I'm going to be less and less inclined to try to, take up all 75 minutes for our classes every time we go. So today we're going to look at Project 3, which again is going to run concurrently with Project 2. You'll see how that sort of like merges together. It should be complementary work rather than like competing work. And then I want to just talk about merge conflicts. So this will be maybe one of the videos that if you come back to any of the videos from my classes, as some students do, they'll go, Stolly, I was looking at your thing from spring of 2017, and it's cool to hear that, but then I'm always like, you should look at the updated version. But we're going to talk about merge conflicts in Git generally, and sort of 3 scenarios in which a merge conflict is going to happen. Most basic one is where you have a conflict with yourself, where you get multiple branches in play and you kind of lose track of what you're doing, and so you end up having 2 different branches with 2 different sets of work, some of which collide. We'll look at the merge conflict that I deal with the most in my own life, which is where you fall out of sync on your local repository with your own remote repository. If you're the kind of person who has multiple computers in your life, that's a very common one. So we'll look at how those are resolved. And then finally, the one that will, of course, be most familiar is the case where you've got a merge conflict that appears on GitHub after you've done a pull request. So we will talk about some strategies about trying to mitigate those things, but the bottom line is that if you're doing anything more than working on a single branch on a single computer, you're going to have merge conflicts in your life. I'm actually the kind of sick person who enjoys resolving merge conflicts. They're like puzzles. But of course, they can be terrifying the first, 1,000 times that you have them. So we'll look at all of that stuff today. Just a project deadline reminder. Remember, you've got to have your posted and signed team contract in your team's GitHub repository by tomorrow. And I'll just be going, I've made a note of all the group repositories and just making sure that all those things are signed off. Any problems about that, any questions, anything else, of course, contact me in some form, probably on Basecamp, either publicly or via ping, something like that. All right? Any questions about anything before we get started here? All right, I will take that deafening silence as a strong yes or no. So let's look at Project 3. So Project 3 is a user-tested online store. And actually probably what I should call this is user testing of an online store, but I wanted to go concise. So the final project of the course, this is it, asks you to subject your group's online store from Project 2 to 2 rounds of user testing and to implement and report improvements to the project based on what you learn through your user tests, okay? So you should structure your tests around the guidance in Chapter 9 of Krug's book, which of course we've begun to read this week. I think it's only the first 6 chapters we're reading, so 9 will probably be next week, but you might want to skip ahead and look at that. He also has a starting sample script and recording release form on his website. I've provided a link to that there, so you don't have to build those documents from scratch, but they are really important that you have them, so that as you split up testing responsibilities across your group, that 1, you're getting permission from your users to record them in some form, which we'll get to a second in the deliverable, and 2, that you have a consistent script so that you've got comparable data, that everybody has kind of moved through your interface in particular kinds of ways. And as it states here in the description, however your script must be, or I'm sorry, however, comma, Your script must be modified to match your specific project and its tasks, obviously. For each round of tests, you must document users' interactions with your online store. That documentation is both for reference and also for the benefit of your team members who may not be able to attend the test session live. Okay? You'll work that out amongst yourselves. Note that this project overlaps with Project 2, which should incorporate improvements from the first round of user tests. Okay? So deliverables and deadlines for this project. So by Thursday, February 14th, you'll want to have completed your first round of usability testing. Remember to analyze the results and implement changes in your Project 2. Project 2, of course, being due on April 21st. So the idea is possibly next week, definitely the week following, you want to be doing your user tests. And then you want to have that week following the 14th, but before the 21st to actually, fix some things. So it's like, oh my God, nobody could figure out that the shopping cart button was for being a shopping cart, or we had, two of our users could not figure out how to remove something from their cart. And so then you as a team, you put your heads together and you say, okay, how do we improve that button? Or how do we improve that process? Or how do we change where this information is? You make the change, and then that goes into your Project 2. And you write about that in your Project 2 memo. And then the best part is that you'll be able to repeat your tests for the second round in this project, and then you can see, okay, we tried changing this cart. If people suddenly have no problem, then great, congratulations, usability bliss unlocked, and you're good to go. And if you tried it and it still doesn't work, you still haven't cracked the nut, then you'll have the opportunity to write up what you might try next. I'm getting ahead of myself here, okay? That's April 28th, so that's 2 weeks later. That's when you want to have completed your second round of usability testing. That's a rough deadline for your own benefit, because the real next major deliverable is Thursday, May 5th, which is during finals week. That's when you will complete and email me your usability report. So your email should include the GitHub link to your team's report repository, the link to your own fork of the team's report. Let's fix that eventually. So you'll do your report as a repository. It'll go up on GitHub. I think that's in the requirements below. Your team's repository, your fork as usual, a Google Drive link, which you'll need to set to allow me to see what's in there, of your team's test documentation. Those should be all your user videos as well as your test forms. And then finally, you'll have a 4 to 5 sentence self-critique memo of your project and your progress in class this semester, and then a 4 to 5 sentence critique of each of your team members and their contributions to both the usability tests and the final usability report. Okay? There probably might be some questions, but let's go through the requirements because I think that'll help clarify some of the deliverables. So for each round of testing, you must test on 3 users who are not currently enrolled in 362. Now, if you've ever had a psychology class or taken a class on research methods, you'll be like, come on, 3 people is all we're testing on, we're going to draw conclusions from that? And it turns out, yeah. Jacob Nielsen, amongst other usability people, have discovered that you can figure out some 60 to 70% of your major usability concerns just by testing on 3 users. So we're going to do 3 users. As you'll also read, or you might have read already in Krug, the best usability tests are the ones that you actually do. And so the higher the bar you make, oh, we got to test on 30 users. I've been a part of a project like that. I'm still angry about it. It's been like almost 15 years where I just got stuck in this horrible thing, like, oh, we got to test half the planet. And if we don't have, conclusive data, we can't do anything. It's terrible, right? And part of that problem was, too, that you get these quote-unquote usability experts who couldn't code a fucking HTML tag to save their lives, and they come in and they tell us what we're going to do. So that's why we as developers need to learn these methods, learn how to do usability testing, do this stuff ourselves, so we're not just writing some report. We're going to do that, but we're also going to look at actually taking that feedback and implementing it into a real project that you're testing on. All right. Each round of testing should test a different group of users. This is really, really key. If you bring the same 3 people back for a second round of testing, then your results are talking about people who are return visitors to the site. We always want to be doing usability tests with people who don't know the system at all, right? That's a critical point. For example, and this is like one of my prized usability examples, and we'll talk more about this next week, but if you were to usability test a guitar, let's say, or a violin, you'd be like, oh, this thing is terrible. Like, nobody can play a song their first time holding it. It's like, well, yeah, okay. There's a difference between testing an interface that ought to work relatively well to somebody who's brand new and testing something that takes 10,000 hours of practice in order to be really good at. So we always want to test with fresh users because that's the experience we're most worried about. If we can make a system that brand new people can figure out how to use as soon as they use it, then we're serving all users, including the ones who come back for their 1,000th purchase or something like that. All right? So again, if someone was a user tester for the first round, you cannot ask them to participate in the second round. So between you and your team members, you've got to find 6 friends. And as we said, they should not be people who are enrolled in 362 this semester. You must receive a consent form signed physically or digitally by each of your test users. So you can do your tests either in person in a room, as is traditional, or you could do something like a Zoom test. That might be the easiest way to go because then you can have your person share their screen, you can record their interactions on screen, and you might have a talk aloud protocol where you ask the person to kind of narrate for you what they're doing. Again, we'll talk about all of this stuff next week in greater depth. You must document each user in each round of testing. That should include at least an over-the-shoulder video recording and also include a screen recording. Users should use their own devices for the test. I've got a draft post in response to some of the week 11 reading questions that were actually in regards to Callbag's thing about testing. And one of the things that I think is super informative and super helpful and super kind of developer oriented when it comes to usability tests is don't prepare a nice laptop. With, let's maximize Firefox or Chrome and let's get rid of all distractions. Let somebody use their own device and tell them to just leave it as is. If they've got notifications that go off, if they've got weird browser plugins or something, that's incredibly helpful information to know. And it gives you yet another view of what we've basically been talking about since August together, which is that your view of the web as a web developer is very, very different from how most other people are. I mean, like one of the things that I find fascinating / creepy to do when I'm riding public transportation is just look around at the other devices. Like, not to snoop and see what they're doing, but like how many people have like screens that are totally cracked? How many people have 3 years worth of finger grease all over their screens? And then what does that do in terms of how usable your site is, right? That person, that's their phone. For whatever reason, they won't clean it. They can't afford to get the screen fixed, but they need to use that device. And so that becomes an important data point for you to look at. And of course, if you're doing a testing over Zoom, you're only going to get sort of like the screen rendering. You won't get to see the actual device that the person is using, but you can still get a sense of like, okay, how do they organize their desktop, or what browser do they use, or whatever. So you invite that kind of chaos deliberately into the test to, again, not do usability testing in sort of like a sterile lab environment where everything works, but a real live in the world experience where all kinds of crazy stuff might break and might go wrong. All right. Last point on that is to strive to test each user on a different device. So if you can get one user on their phone, one on a tablet or a touchscreen, and one on a laptop or a desktop machine, that would be great, because then you're getting some look at how your system is holding up on those different devices. Not a requirement, but something to strive for. Okay, so those were the test requirements. The test documentation requirements are you should preserve all videos of user tests in Google Drive along with the user consent form. I mentioned Google Drive because you all have Google Drive accounts through the university. If you love Dropbox, if you have something else that you want to use, as long as you can invite me to it so that I can just check out that you actually did your tests, that's fine. I'll just go with Google Drive as sort of like our generic example here. Finally, and this is really freaking important, plan to delete all of your user test videos on May 18th, 2022. I know grades will have been in, that you don't have to listen to another thing I say beyond, whenever grades get posted, but please, for just as an ethical practice, those videos should not be kept around forever. Get in the habit of deleting data after it's no longer useful to the project. And P.S., Your consent form that you're writing up, you can, again, use the one from Krug, but you should tell them that any videos of them will be deleted on or after May 18th, 2022. And of course, you could do something like after May 18th, but before May 30th or something like that. Okay? Main thing is once I've signed off on that, once you've gotten a grade response from me, you're done. Okay? Go ahead and delete those things. All right? Implementation requirements. So the results from the first round of user testing should lead to specific changes on your team's project too. Okay? And there will be changes. I know you're just like, well, Stolly, what if we find that our system is great and perfect? Okay, you won't. And if you genuinely do, then let's talk about how you're going to improve your testing for the second round, because whatever you were asking users to do was obviously a little too easy. Okay? And then finally, keep notes on the changes your team implemented based on the first round of testing. You'll write about those changes in your memo for Project 2. And then finally, the last deliverable is your usability report. These are the requirements for it. So the results from the second round of user testing will lead to a brief, emphasis brief, don't please make me read like a 10 or 15 or 20-page report. 3 pages is plenty, okay? A page per user, or a page per major issue or something like that at most, okay? Again, this is not English class. This is corporate world kind of stuff. If you write some long document, it might be great and it might be brilliant, and absolutely nobody is going to read it. So write something that is going to be read and read quickly and be high impact and concise. Okay, so the results from the second round will lead to that brief report outlining the changes that should be made to further improve your online store. Okay. The report should be jointly authored as a markdown file in its own GitHub repository in your team's GitHub organization where you have your Project 2 repository, okay? But it should be a separate thing. You and your team members should all contribute to the report via pull requests. And finally, note that you do not, please underscore, triple underscore, bullet point, bold face, do not need to implement the changes. You need to only report them as a future improvement. So, to review, again, by April 14th, have concluded your first round of usability testings. By April 21st, turn in your second project, including the changes you make because of that first round. And from then on, you have no more code responsibilities to me and to this class. From then on, your only deliverables are to do another round of tests on your final version of Project 2 as you turned it in, and then a report about what you would do next. But again, it is only a report. You don't actually have to do any of the changes that you write about in there. Okay? Goals for the project are short, and then I will take questions. Evaluate user interface designs with human subjects. Demonstrate how user-centered concerns can be incorporated into system development life cycles, right? We test, we build some more, we test again, and then of course if this was our job, then we test again, develop some more, test, develop, test, develop, test, develop. We're at the end of the runway, so it's test, develop, test, report. Okay. Explain the need to evaluate system usability. And finally, conduct and document usability tests on mobile and traditional devices, either remotely or in person, or both. If you've got one person, like somebody who's got a roommate or something, that you can like sit there and watch them use the thing on their phone, fine. As long as you can do like an over-the-shoulder recording or something so that you can see what the person is actually doing, that's perfect. And then you can do the other ones remotely. Okay? That's it. That is the last project of this class. That is the last thing that I will ask you to do. Are there any questions about it? Nothing at all? Stolly, you write such great project descriptions. You leave no questions to be asked. All right. Thank you, Jacob. Okay. All right, well, as usual, we've got a weekly Q&A, and I've mentioned Project 3 in the title of it, so if a question occurs to you later, please post that. You might want to have a quick, wherever you're talking to your group on Discord or something, just have your own little Q&A, like discuss this thing and start planning it out. Because again, we're into April, things are going really, really fast, and it is going to be the end of the semester before you know it. So don't get caught, trying to run usability tests and write code on the night of the 20th or something like that, because you're going to have a bad time. Okay? All right, now the thing that everybody is probably most eagerly awaiting, which is merge conflicts. So I've already created a merge conflicts repository on our course organization. I have already forked that to my personal, aka my non-classroom GitHub account, and I've opened up a pull request on that. And so now what I want to do is be the second person in, the person who's going to then fork and open up another pull request. So let's walk through all that. But before we do that, I'm going to just, again, go through this process. It is essential that you fork the project that you're working on from your group repository. If you're like, oh, let's all just name it the same thing, what you're going to have is entirely different commit histories, and your entire life for the rest of time is just going to be one merge conflict after another. So there's a reason that we want to fork, or at the very least clone from, and then just fork, right? Have your own fork of this thing that comes from your upstream group repository. So I'm going to go to this thing, and you are welcome to do this too. If you want to practice making, and it sounds like most of you have done this already, but if you want to practice making a pull request, I'm probably not going to actually merge any of them, but if you just want to go through this yourself and follow along, you're totally welcome to do that. So what I'm going to do is here on 12 merge conflicts, I'm going to fork this thing, and I'm going to fork this directly into my Prof. Stali account. Right? You should be old hands at forking by right now. And P.S., like, you guys are going to be like small gods in all of your future classes and when you have a job, because I have put you through some serious paces with Git and GitHub, not just this year, but especially this semester. So, congratulations for sticking with it, for not giving up, and, enjoy your superpowers that you'll have, that you will blow people's minds in other classes. All right, so we got merge conflicts here. I've forked this thing. And if I go back to the merge conflicts thing, we'll see that there is an open pull request, right? That's open from my other account. But I'm going to play the ignoramus, which is not a hard role for me to play. I'm going to... where did I go? Let's go to the network here. There we go, forks. We'll just go back this way. All right, so I'm going to go here back to my fork of this thing. And of course, as always, I'm going to clone this thing. All right, and I'm going to go into here. Now, I promised to teach 3 different kinds of merge conflicts that happen. So let me do that right now. So the first one is where we have 2 different branches locally within a repository where a conflict arises. Okay. Right, so I see this, I'm like, okay, that's cool. And it's like, well, really I'd like to add some instructions to the group. So I might open up a local branch here called instructions. Okay. And I would say, instructions. Make sure you always check in on Discord before tackling a new feature or whatever. All right, and I will go ahead and hard wrap that because I like good sanitary, or can I hard wrap that? It might be too small here. Okay. Just got a long line length, so don't need to wrap it. All right, so I'm going to do that, and I will make a commit. On this instructions branch, I'll say add instructions, or add readme. Add instructions to check Discord. Okay. And then maybe I go and I do some other work for a while on main, or I'm just a smart person who realizes that like you should always create your forks from the main branch. That way that you're keeping up with whatever is on the main upstream. Ooh, and that actually is a part that I skipped. We'll do it in a second. And if I forget, I'll say, go back to this point in the video where I said I should add the upstream. Since I'm only going to deal with local merge conflicts right now, I want to do this one. So I might also say, okay, use a bullet and include your GitHub username. And I might say, oh, that's kind of shoddy instructions here because we actually don't say include your name and username here. So I'm going to make that, right? So I'll make another branch, again, off my main branch. That's almost always where you want to start, is off of main. We'll talk about that more in a second. So I'll do, we'll do this like name advice, we'll call this thing. Okay. Use a bullet and include your GitHub username. Actually, I wonder if this is going to cause a merge conflict. This might not. Okay, let's pause here. Two things that cause a merge conflict. One is a small number of lines in a file. The fewer number of lines you have total in a file, the more likely that changes, even if they're in separate areas, might trigger a merge conflict. In this particular case, if I fix this one, there actually might not be a merge conflict. So I'm going to be like, let's just do something else. I'll make a different branch, right? Meeting dates, right? Wednesday, April 6th, Thursday, April 7th, or something like that, right? Just to have some content. Let me change branches here. I'm going to say, I can switch back to main, that's fine. I'm going to get branch D, that name advice, because that doesn't make any sense. And then I'm going to do get switch C again, and I'm going to say meeting dates, or just meetings. Okay, get status here, get diff. All right, so we've got some meeting dates here. So I'll do add readme, add meeting dates, like that. Okay, whoopee, whoopee, whoopee. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to main now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make another one. I'm going to do, we'll just call this conflict-orama. Okay, because what I want to do here is I want to actually rebase my meetings branch, which I've just made my conflict-orama branch off of. So I've got that. If I do git log here, right, there's adding the signing instructions, which was the first commit I made earlier by myself, and then added the meeting dates. And if I do git switch instructions, git log, there we've got instructions to check Discord. There's our parent commit that adds signing instructions. So if I go back over to conflict-orama, now I want to say git rebase instructions. Okay, merge works the same way. My basic advice is, one, don't use merge commits or merging in general unless that's what your team outside of this class, right? Your job, your whatever you're doing. If that's the project style is to use merges. To me, rebasing is better. It's cleaner and more complicated, right? So it's like, you know, endurance training or something. If you know how to rebase things and fix merge commits or merge conflicts, that way you're going to have no problem doing that same thing with a merge. So I'm going to say git rebase instructions. And when I do that, boom, there's the ugly message that sends fear into the hearts of developers everywhere. We say conflict in the content. We see that there is a merge conflict in readme.markdown. We see that there's an error that we could not apply the add meeting dates, right? Which of course is the second commit. We're rebasing, which means that we're going to say pretend that the instructions commit already exists and then add the meeting dates after that. We get these hints, and they are golden. Like literally, they are colored gold. Okay? Resolve all the conflicts manually. Mark them as resolved with git add remove conflicted files. Then run git rebase continues. You can instead skip this commit, which would be git rebase skip, but that's not going to really help us. To abort and get back to the state before git rebase, just run git rebase abort. You'll notice I am what's called a detached state here. I'm no longer on any branch. Instead, I am on the kind of no man's land. If you've seen like the movie Soul, like the weird like in between worlds place, all I'm doing here is I'm got to fix these merge conflicts. Okay, if I say get rebase abort, then I'm just out. In fact, let me just do that. Maybe this turns out to be a bad idea. Get rebase abort. I do that. This thing is gone. If I run get status, everything is fine. Cool. So maybe that was the wrong branch. I didn't actually want to rebase it. But I do. Rebase instructions. One more time. Bam. There's my problem. Now, you might see that there's some colorful things happening in my editor, but if I just run get status at this point, right? We see get both modified. If I run get diff readme at this point, I'm going to see this, okay? I'm going to see head. There's my instructions thing, right? And then I'm going to say meeting dates, and then this is the add meeting dates commit. So head is saying, this is what we're trying to add on to here. This is what you've already got. And these are in conflict because these lines are different in each of those branches. Okay. Now, if I look at these things, this is automatically loaded up because I had this README file opened in Atom. And of course, Atom is not the only editor that will walk you through a merge conflict. The problem is that they're trying to be a little bit too helpful. They're like, use me, or use me. Well, the problem is, and this is the case for most merge conflicts, it's not a let's use theirs, not ours. It's a they've got some work that we need, we've got some work that we need. And so what we need to do here is actually not say use me or use me. We want to say, no, let's use all of these things. We want to use the instructions and we want to use the meeting dates. So what we do instead, again, it's super tempting to click these things, but let's not do that. Instead, I'm going to say, okay, we got to just solve this thing like adults, okay? And so I'm going to delete that change marker. I'm going to delete this other change marker, and then I'm going to delete this last change marker like that. And then the last thing I'm going to do is going to say, let's have, I guess instructions and meeting dates, they could remain in that order. But just to prove that we don't even have to live with that, I'm going to say, no, let's put the meeting dates up top where people are going to see them. Okay. And then let's put the instructions down here like that. Okay. All right. And then we do see this use me or revert. If I say use me, it goes away. So again, oh, come on, Adam, really? You jerks. All right, that's why you don't click buttons. We're developers, we're more refined than that. If I do get diff at this point, okay, we've now just got everything being lost here. This is a hopeless case. I could fix it, I don't want to. I'm gonna say get rebase abort one more time. And now here with feeling, get rebase instructions, we'll get back to that same situation. Get rid of that head marker, get rid of that middle marker showing the difference between the two, get rid of this last one, and then I'm going to bump my meeting dates up here, and I'm going to leave my instructions down here. These buttons annoy me in multiple ways, not the least of which is that they just kind of like take up this negative space where there's no line number. So watch your line numbers. I want to have nice empty lines of space between the section. That's empty line on line 7, empty line on line 3, and then empty line on line 10. So I'm going to just save this thing. I'm not going to touch GitHub's wacky or Atom's wacky buttons. I'm just going to close this file. And then I'm going to do get status again. We see we've got get both modified. If I do get diff now, here's what I've got. This is how I'm resolving this thing. Okay, and if we remember on our hints, resolve all the conflicts manually, mark them as resolved with get add or remove. If you want to get rid of a file, we don't want to do that in this case. And then we run get rebase continue. So I'm going to say get add readme, and then we'll say get rebase continue. All right, and it tells me that it's waiting for my editor to close the file. I have the chance here to change this commit message, although actually that to me is a just fine commit. But I might also say, also reorder with or we may not even say reorder. We could just say also properly order with instructions. All right, I close that thing. I come back here now on the conflict ORAMA branch. So I'm no longer in this detached state. And I can see that there's one file changed for insertions. If I want to, I can say git log. Okay, and I can inspect here. Okay, so this was the new commit that was causing all the problems because I was rebasing on that instructions branch. So we could say, okay, show me that thing. So I could say, shit show. Git show. There's an alias for you. Shit show. Okay? So here's that original commit that was causing all the problems. And now if I look at my rebased commit here for adding the meeting dates, I can say git show. All right? And in that case, the diff that we saw in the detached head mode here was different, which actually makes this also properly reorder with instructions. No, it looks like the whole time we were like, yeah, we'll add meeting dates before the instructions. At which point I might say, sure, let's actually just change that commit message by running git commit amend. We haven't pushed this anywhere yet, so this is totally fine to do. Git commit amend. We'll just say add meeting dates. And then nobody has to even know that we went through all of that hassle to try to get these things in parallel with each other. So we go there, got a new stamp here. We got our simplified commit message. So one more time, let's do git show 6C F9. There we go. Added our meeting dates. And so now we've got a very nice, clean history all the way along. That's why I love rebasing. That's why it's fantastic. Okay. So to review, that is what we do in a merge conflict when we've got two different branches within the same repository and we're trying to merge them onto a single branch. This is a little bit of a contrived example because we've got this conflict ORAMA, so I set that up to fail. But hopefully you saw there's really not a big deal to a merge conflict when it comes to resolving it. And again, despite those use theirs, use ours, or whatever the buttons are in Atom, it's often more complicated than that. And you'll piss people off and be like, well, screw you, man. This is my work, so I'm going to say use mine. And then that gets lost. And it's like, how did that get lost? Well, then we'll do a little get blame and figure out what happened to that commit, who screwed it up. So again, in the rare cases where there genuinely is a conflict and one commit is the winner or one commit's contents is the winner, fine, use me, use theirs. The rest of the time, delete those markers and get on with your life. Okay, so I'm going to now go back to my main branch. Or actually, you know what? I'm gonna push this thing up. I'm gonna push up conflict ORAMA. I'm not gonna open up a pull request from it, but I want to simulate what can happen sometimes when I'm working across multiple computers. Okay, so I've just pushed this branch. Now you can avert your eyes for a second. I'm just going to roll back a commit here as though I don't have a full working branch or a copy that's completely up to date. So I'm going to say git log -2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll back to this instructions commit here. I'm going to just say git reset hard to that. And now we see we're back to adding instructions. So if I run git log here, okay, I've got 3 commits. Now, here's the interesting thing about remotes. I don't think I've ever shared this with you, taught this, but usually we're saying git pull when we want to get stuff, but there's this other command that we can run called git fetch. And git fetch will update all the references to the remote. If there's anything it doesn't have, it'll pull those things down. And the difference is it doesn't mess with any of your branches the way that git pull does. When you do a git pull, it's actually 2 actions. The first thing it does is to do a fetch, and then the second thing it does is to do a merge based on whatever your merge strategy is in your git config file. Okay, so I've got this git fetch. We've seen before where we've done like git remote v, right, and seen our different remotes. Again, I'm reminding myself I've only currently got my own fork here. I'll change that in a second. But we've also seen the git branch command. And when you run git branch by itself, it's just going to list for you all the branches that are available locally. If you add the A argument for all, git branch all, you're now going to see both your list of locally available branches, which this is great for cleanup, by the way. There was somebody that was posting on the PP04 discussion was saying like, somehow one of us got like 7 branches, okay? Run git branch by itself, see what you've got going on, and then figure out if it's safe to delete that stuff, right? So you can clean it up. But we also have these other branches that are available to us that are remotes, and we can actually run the same kinds of commands we usually do. If I want to, I can say git diff origin main, okay? And it will actually tell me what I've got that's different on the origin versus what I've got here in my local repository. Now, I've deliberately rolled back that commit because I want to cause problems for myself, right? So what I'm going to do here is add another line, right? I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to say tips on resolving merge conflicts, right? Use git fetch with git diff, origin some branch, right? To see what's different. And we can say that's remote conflicts only, right? Create a throwaway branch to practice resolving conflicts, right? Most of the time, like if I've got a branch and I'm working with somebody else and it's not right, I'm gonna not try to resolve those conflicts on my actual branch that has my actual work. I'll be like, I'll create a branch like git switch C attempt resolution or something like that. And then I'll do that, and then I'll go back to my original branch, and then I'll do it for keeps there, especially if it's already a remote that I'm talking to. Okay, so we've added these commits, and this is often a situation that shows up for me when I'm working across computers. I'll do some work on our course site, and then I'll go off and have a weekend, and I'll come back Sunday night, and I'll panic, and I'll do something else. On a different computer, I forget to sit down and pull from my remote before I work. And so innocently enough, I'll be like, wow, I'm awesome. Git is awesome. I'm going to just go ahead, git status, and then we'll see git readme, and then I'll do git diff. I'm like, cool, yeah, those are good tips for resolving merge conflicts. And then I will just add that thing, and then I will say git commit m. Add some tips for resolving merge conflicts. Like that. I'll be like, wow, great, wonderful work today. Now I'm going to push to my remote. And so I will say git push origin conflictorama. And we get this lovely message, which of course is even worse because now there's blood red text on the screen. And we see error, failed to push some refs to github.com. We see updates were rejected because the tip of your current branch is behind its remote counterpart. Integrate the remote changes, e.g. git pull, before pushing again. We can see a note about fast forwards and git push help for details. Okay, that all sounds good. Let's try it. Let's try to do git pull origin conflictorama. And when I do that, that one says not possible to fast forward, aborting. Oh no, right? And here is where a newbie Git user will be like, oh, well, I just know there's this thing. I can say git push F origin conflictorama, and that'll make the scary messages go away. And I'll say, yes, it'll make it go away. It will also make the work that you've got on your remote go away, which is not advisable, right? So what we have to do here is just like before where we had 2 different branches with separate commits, both of which contained work we actually wanted, we've got to resolve this time with a remote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, so let's just double check. Let's fetch origin, and we can specify the branch, I believe, conflict. Usually I just say git fetch origin, git fetch whatever the name of the remote is. All right, and again, I can run git diff origin conflictorama. Okay, and when I do this, I see what the problem is. Okay, the remote has these lines that are here marked as deletions because I don't have them. Okay, and I've got these lines that the remote branch doesn't have. So we're in that same situation as before, where we need to get both of these things together, right? I've got this new work that I've created here locally. I've got this old work that I forgot to run git pull and git before I started doing this. So what do? We're going to use git rebase again, except here the argument is we're going to say, okay, we need to rebase this branch, conflict-o-rama locally, from the branch that we already pushed up to GitHub. So I'm going to say git rebase origin conflict, oops, and actually we need to do a slash here, git rebase origin conflict-o-rama. I'll do that, and then I get this happy message. Okay, it just says successfully rebased and updated, refs head conflict-o-rama. The reason that that one worked is that we've now got a file that has more lines in it, and most importantly is we've got these two, and if you count the spaces, which Git doesn't generally count, but we had these two lines kind of serving as like a buffer zone between the two changes. Recall that this was the one that was on my remote but not on my local branch. These were the lines that were on my local branch but not on my remote. And so this was like Switzerland or some neutral territory and be like, hey, it's cool. Like, I'm a place that we all know about, and so these are the different lines and these are the different lines, but they're not in conflict with each other. If I had done tips on resolving merge conflicts above instructions, I would likely have had to resolve those conflicts. All right? Best part yet is that if I do git log now, there's my add meeting dates that I'd forgotten to run git pull, so I didn't have those. And then there's my add some tips for resolving merge conflicts. The only thing that has changed about it is the commit hash, because once we rebase, that's to say we start from this shared starting point, which ironically or not, that's our add instructions to Discord. That was the part that was the neutral area here. And then we say, okay, so then pretend we had this add meeting dates before we did this add some tips. And so that's what a rebase is, where we just say, okay, stick that there, put the new work up top. Because I didn't do the, desperation move of force pushing, which would have caused, again, worse problems. Now all I have to do is say, all right, can I push this thing to my conflict-o-rama branch? When we do that, we will get the happy push message that we always expect to see when we do a push, okay? So, again, don't let those scary looking messages shake you. Use the tools that are available to you in Git to figure out what's going on, okay? There we go. So that's solving merge conflicts that appear when you've got a disconnect between your own remote and your own local. Let's do the last one, which is the one that you've all been experiencing this week, where we have a conflict between a remote, rather an upstream, that gets introduced via a pull request. So I'm going to add my upstream, git remote, add upstream. And again, there's nothing magical about upstream. I like that. That's the one that I can think of. Like origin is my fork. Origin is a good default because, again, if you do git clone, you get origin as the remote by default. Upstream is pretty common. It's the one that I use if you like team, if you like group, if you like or don't like your group and you want to call your remote these jerks, you can say git remote add upstream or add these jerks, right? And then you'll just say git pull these jerks main or something like that, all right? I'm going to go with upstream. Let me run over to GitHub here and get the correct remote for my upstream. Grab that thing. Git remote add upstream, like that. Now, I am not going to pull from it, although in this case, if I did that, it wouldn't be a problem. But I'm going to switch back to my main branch. I'm going to say, okay, the original things were that I have to sign this thing below, right? Very familiar. Use bullet and include your Git username. And of course, I didn't do a pull request off of those other changes. I could have done that, but let's just do the thing. And so I'm going to say, all right, Carl Stali, and then I'm going to say in parentheses @Prof Stali, like that. Okay, cool. I've done the assignment. I'm such a good student, right? And so I'll say Ooh, first I'll see that I'm on the main branch. Don't want to do that. So I'm going to create, before I make the commit, I'll just switch sign readme. Still in the same status. I can diff things out. I'm just working with a different branch so that I've got a nicely named feature branch. So let's see, have we added this yet? We have not. Sign the readme as @profstolly. All right, and I'm going to push this thing up. And I'm going to be all excited because I'm going to go ahead and open up a pull request. Let's see, I need to go back over to profstolly to see that. Okay. So we go, sign readme had recent pushes. I'm going to say, cool, compare pull request. And it says I'm able to merge. I'm a winner. Okay, and I'll say, hey guys, signed this like we agreed. ... Right, and then I can say create pull request. Okay, wonderful, hurrah, what a wonderful futuristic world we live in. Everything is great. The problem is that everything isn't great. Because while I was doing all of that, my team was reviewing pull requests back on this branch. And the first one that they see is the one that came in earlier. Sign the README file. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Looks like Stolly signed this thing, but we're not going to take his word for it. Don't just look at the commit message. We want to look at the commit. We look at that, we see, okay, look, this is good, verified. Let's actually click the commit and see what got changed here. Okay, there we go. Carl Stolly @Carl Stolly. What a great job he did. Okay? So we can go back to the conversation, and then we can sign off and do all the things, and then I'm going to just say, all right, we're going to rebase and merge this thing. Okay, we do that. Branch has no conflicts. Whee! Now, before I click this button, let's review that the pull request I opened from my profstolly account, it too is like, this kid branch has no conflicts. It's going to be just fine. That's about to change because I'm going to say rebase and merge. I'm going to confirm it. And then that should be it. We should have a closed pull request here. Great. Hooray, wonderful. Now, profstolly here, gonna get this. This branch has conflicts that must be resolved. Now, there is a button here that will allow you to click to resolve conflicts. Let's explore that thing. Okay? This is going to give you essentially the same readout as what we had before. I don't recommend doing it this way because if something goes wrong, I don't trust GitHub to give me the tools that I know that I'll get on my own local repository for this. So at this point, what you need to do is say, hey, message this person on your Discord and be like, dude, we can't bring in your branch, right? Or actually, what we could do is just drop a comment here. Hey, some things have changed. Please update your PR branch from upstream main or whatever, okay? And it would be good to do this, like to comment like that. Person will be notified. Not a bad idea to jump onto your Discord server either and say, hey, like, can you fix this thing? So I get that message. I'm like, okay, shoot. So this is my sign readme. So I'm still on this branch because that's where I did that work. I'm going to say, all right, git switch main. And now I'm going to do git pull upstream main. Okay? It's going to do a fetch. It's going to do a pull. It's going to do a merge. Everything was fine. So here I can see this joker called @CarlStyle. Yeah, he signed it. Okay, so what's the problem? Now I need to go and find the branch where my pull request is open. I'll say git switch sign readme. And now I need to rebase sign readme on the main branch. So I basically say, okay, pretend that the commits that I've written on this branch, right, specifically this one, have all the commits that were made on the main branch. So I say git rebase main, all right? And when I do that, I'm gonna get this ugly conflict. You're gonna be saying, damn it, Stolly, you make it sound like this is so much fun. It's not fun. Oh, come on. It's totally fun, right? Because we go in here, there's their changes, here's our changes. But again, even though it's the same dummy sign in this thing twice, we actually want both of these things because they represent different things. So we'll just say, all right, get rid of this head marker. And again, let me just to emphasize that this is not a atom thing. We actually get these characters inserted into the text file, which means the worst thing you can do is be like, screw this, I'll just do git add, git commit, or git rebase continue. You don't want to do that because then you'll actually commit these merge markers in your files, which is going to cause errors and things to break. So you want to make sure that there's never any of these things hanging around. Okay, so even though these things are colored here, I'm going to just delete that, delete this, and then delete this last conflict marker. And now I'll save this thing. And I'm not going to be tempted to click any buttons here. The file looks like it should. We've got lines 4, we've got lines 5, and now we've got 7 and 8 here, just like that. And so now I'm going to say, all right, let's go ahead and continue this rebase. So we'll say git rebase. Hang on, we got 2 steps to do, right? If I do git status again, I'll remind myself I need to add readme once I've marked everything to be fixed. Okay. Do git status again. There's our modification. If I do git diff staged, I can see exactly what I'm diffing out here, which is, boom, we're going to fix this one thing. And now I can say, ooh, not git commit, we're just going to say git rebase continue. All right, it's going to say wait to close the file, and then we'll see we're signing the readme as prof Stali. So I close that. Now I've got to update my pull request on GitHub, and the way that I do that is I've got to push up the changes now that I've made on this sign readme. Problem is we're going to now have an issue. I'm going to say git push origin sign readme. And it's going to scream at me because it's going to say, you've got things that we don't know. All right? And I'll be like, well, what the hell? All I did was just rebase the branch, and therein lies the tragedy. So, because basically we've got the same work where we've added Carl Stali at Prof Stali on the same branch, but they've got different commits. So, again, git fetch, origin. I'm fetching that, and now I'm going to say, all right, well, what's the difference here? I'm going to say git diff origin sign readme, and it's going to come up and say, well, you know about this, but we don't. Okay, and so it turns out, okay, that's the thing that I added through that rebase. It's the thing I don't have, and so now what I need to do is legitimately use git push f origin main, and so I will be doing a force push to my pull request to get this thing up. The other way that we could try to do this, let's just repeat the same thing. Let's try to say, all right, we'll git fetch that. Let's do git. I don't want to do that. We could rebase, but then we'd be in this weird situation where we've got that. So this is one of the cases in life where sometimes you actually do need to do a force push, where you've rebased, so you've got the changes from the branch that you're trying to merge onto on GitHub, and you need to get them up. So we'll just say git push f origin main. Oh, not origin main, origin sign readme. We do that. Okay, we got a forced update. Now let's go and inspect what's happened on GitHub. So here's my open pull request. Please update that thing, sign readme. Okay, then we'll see. Prof Stali force pushed the sign readme branch from this to this. And if we want to, we can compare that thing. But now the happy thing is I'm back to this message. This branch has no conflicts with the base branch when rebasing. And so I'll say, all right, cool. As some other person in the group, I'll say rebase and merge. We'll confirm it. And there we go. And now the last order of business, when I'm cleaning up, after I've had a pull request taken, I want to go back and say, all right, I'm going to switch out to my main branch. I'm going to git pull upstream main. So I'm always keeping this thing intact. And of course, you get in this weird situation where it's like, if we just log this out, all right, there's where I signed this as Prof Stali. That's that new commit for the pull request. And now I'm going to say git branch delete sign readme. Okay. Now it's going to say it has not been fully merged. That's true because there's actually a different commit message here. So what I want to do is I'm going to use git capital D, git branch D sign readme. That deletes my local branch, but I want to go further and I want to clean up my remote branch too. And so I'm going to say git branch D origin No. Sorry. What we need to do is do a push, get push origin, colon, sign readme. And that colon syntax basically says, hey, we're going to do a push here, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to delete the thing that's behind the colon. So if you ever wanted to know how do you delete a remote branch, you do it by pushing to the colon. GitHub has checks on it that will make it so that you cannot delete the branch that you've specified as the default branch. So it has that safety check, but otherwise everything else you can just delete out as you want to. Okay? That's it. That's my shtick. That's the Stali method for handling merge conflicts. Embrace them. They're actually fun. They're like puzzles. If you get to a situation where you've got an ours and a theirs and you can't make sense of it, that's where you just stop, jump on your Discord or whatever, or back to the pull request and start commenting on there and figure out like, hey, I'm dealing with this. I've got this here. I've got this there. What did we decide? Or talk to the person who's got the conflicting thing. Okay? Git only gets you so far. Good communication, rapid, responsive communication is really the other core part of this thing, at least when you can't figure out what should be there on its own. Okay? Questions about any of this? So much for a Stali like, oh, we won't go the whole time. Here we are 10 minutes from the end of class. Okay, so Angela's asking, why does git pull upstream main not work sometimes? Like it lies and tells me my fork is updated and not behind upstream main, but it is. Okay, so that's a different situation, Angela. I'm not sure that it would actually be upstream main because when you do a pull, if you do git status git log, let's do pretty equals one line here. Okay. Right now, it's going to tell me where the different branches are. And so I can see that Git knows that the tip of my head is right here on main and that my upstream main is the sign. Now, what is not up to date is my origin branch here. All right. And if I do git pull origin main at this point, it's going to say everything's up to date. Well, that's not the problem. We actually need to update our copy of main on the fork with the one that we've pulled from upstream. Because again, if we look at the actual group repository here, there's the two people that have actually signed this file. Cool. If I look at my fork of this on Prof. Stali, right, my main branch is back here without any of these changes. So this final step, the best step, is that after you've resolved all these things and you've updated from the upstream main, is to push to your own origin main so that that too has all the same things. So we'll say git push origin main. We'll do that. And now my fork of this merge conflicts repo is perfectly in sync with the other things. So there shouldn't be lies. And now if I do that git log pretty one line again, we should now see, okay, the head of your local repository is pointed to the main branch. Upstream main is up to date with this. Origin main is up to date with this. And so is origin head. There's the commit message on it. So that's what you want to look for here, is to see that all those different remotes are all reporting that they're up to date. If you just do a git fetch first, you can do the same git status, but it's going to look different because we actually haven't merged the commits yet. Okay. And the other thing I would say, Angela, is next time that happens to you where it's out and out lying to you, if you can jump on Basecamp with some screenshots where you run the git pull and says everything's up to date, and you run git status and you run git log for the last however many commits, then I'd be interested to see that so I could try to walk through that with you. Other questions? All right. Well, I hope this was useful. Good luck as you're getting through all the merge conflicts. Those of you who know my evil side, which is not really any of you, this was deliberate. Part of the reason I wanted you to sign your stuff in the in that initial thing is that I knew you were going to get merge conflicts and that you were going to have to resolve them, right? And the good news is now you'll have gone through that process, except for the very first person, right? First person to sign is going to have no problem. Everybody that comes after is going to have problems, and you'll have to do something very similar to this, okay? And again, GitHub is pretty. It's nice for doing messages and opening pull requests. I don't use any of GitHub's own tools because if something gets screwed up, I want to be able to get back to whatever I had previously, and I don't trust that I'm going to be able to do that on GitHub, okay? And the last thing is that the work that you do, I didn't merge or rebase my own signed README branch here. I got my work back by updating from upstream main. So that's always how your own work comes back to you. So that your main branch should always be exactly in sync with your, certainly your upstream and probably your origin too, because you're pushing to it. All right. Enjoy the rest of this rainy day. I will see you all on Basecamp. Have a great rest of the afternoon and a great weekend. And I will see you back in person on Monday. Bye for now.